Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Breaking the Stigma podcast channel. We're coming today just wanting to take it back to the basics. And the reason for this podcast is just to kind of get everyone back on the thought of why the podcast itself was originally created, which is to help break the stigma. So we're just bringing it back to the basics, got a few, questions and insights about mental health in general. So the first question would be, what is mental health? Does anybody know what really mental health is, or what does mental health mean to you? Mental health in a definition term includes our emotional and psychological and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. So that is the definition of mental health. But what does it really mean to you? What did you grow up believing mental health was, or mental illness? It also helps how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. So that all has to deal with mental health in itself as well. And then you have your different types of mental illnesses. I know a lot of people, first thing you think of when someone is talking about mental health or mental illnesses, a lot of times people go either very far left, as I say, or they typically know that some of the things that people deal with are things in general like anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, and then you have your extreme psychotic behaviors, from schizophrenia to personality disorders, things as that nature. And a lot of times that's the first thing people think about are those extreme psychotic issues. But overall, the different types of mental health issues or disorders are, again, like I said, anxiety, you have ADHD, there's eating disorders, co-occurring mental and substance abuse, because they go sometimes hand in hand. You have your mood disorders, your personality disorders, your psychotic disorders, substance use, and suicidal behaviors. Where to start? Because I know when I originally got into this field, I was one of those ones that had a big stigma because I didn't see, I was so closed-minded, let's just say. Because, as patients are coming in or talking about issues, some of them, it just seemed like they were just using it to play a game, either whether it was coming down to work or just how they reacted to different situations. But the longer I worked in the field and really got to know certain things and really developing my brain around, what it truly was, to have some sort of mental illness, and then just experiencing things, myself, it really let me know that no one is immune to it. We all deal with mental health issues in some sort of way, whether it be low risk or high risk. We all have dealt with it. We've all had family members that have dealt with mental illnesses, co-workers, or just people in general in the, human race. And then it's important to remember that we shouldn't be so judgmental when it does come to mental illnesses because of that. We all say that, this person is just crazy and da-da-da. I never would, do this or do that if I was in this state. But the truth of the matter is this: we're all humans. We all make mistakes. We've all, experienced some sort of mental health issues. And for you to say that you haven't would be a lie. Because there's just things that you probably are not aware of or thinking of as it relates to mental health issues. Case in point, one of our biggest things is stress, work-related stress in general. We all deal with it. So therefore, there are things that mentally you have dealt with. It just depends on what your course of actions are to, combat those things. Then I would like to ask you guys, like, what are the types of stigma? Do you even know that? Do you know the different type of stigmas there are when it comes to mental illness? Two of the big ones is going to be your social or public stigma, and then self-stigma. So with social or public stigma, it's just the negative stereotype that the world has against mental illness or people dealing with some sort of mental illness. And then you have your self-stigma, which, kind of occurs when people who are dealing with mental illnesses, they have the tendency to internalize, these public attitudes or behaviors based upon what the society is dealing out when it comes to those disorders. And they tend to leave people who are vulnerable suffering, as a negative consequence to how society is thinking of them. And, like, how does stigma affect people's lives? Like I said, a stigma, regardless if it's mental illness or not, a stigma is going to affect someone's life, either traumatically or just in some sort of way. It's going to alter that person's life, because in a mental health world, some of the things that we can experience is not getting help. So therefore, your mental illness goes untreated and can become worse, all based upon the stigma that society has placed on mental health. So to me, that's a big eye opener, and it just goes to show how much we let society or someone else dictate when we should get help, how we should get help, do we need help, and things like that. And many people won't seek the proper help or channels to find out what kind of help they would need. And like I said, it's just going to make the issues even worse. And then we're going to be, as a society, sitting back talking about these people rather than trying to either comfort them or get them the help that they need, which is just kind of crazy to me. I sit back and I just look at the world every day, and I just want to sit back and be able to help and make a difference. And that's why I wholeheartedly believe now that creating these stigmas surrounding issue dealing with the mind is just kind of sad to me. But we continue to keep playing on it, and just being in a human race has its effects. Well, we're going to listen to this commercial real quick.
Is spreading in some of our communities. This disease, also known as COVID-19, is thought to spread mainly from person to person through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. These droplets can spread to the mouth, nose, or hands of people who are nearby, or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. Take steps to lower your risk of getting sick. Here are some things you should do. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. You can also use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Take extra measures to put distance between yourself and others. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Stay home if you're sick, except to get medical care. If you have severe symptoms, please call 911. Cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue or the inside of your elbow. Only wear a face mask if you're sick and around other people, or if you need to take care of someone who is sick. Clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces. Older adults and people who have severe chronic medical conditions like heart or lung disease or diabetes are at higher risk for more serious illness from COVID-19. This group should consult with their healthcare provider about additional steps to stay protected. For more information on COVID-19, please visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. Let's work together to protect ourselves, our families, and our communities.
Okay, so back to what I was talking about. I wanted to throw that commercial in there since we're, dealing a lot with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and everything. So I hope those tips, of course, we've heard them numerous of times, will help you guys out. But just going back to speaking of how us as a human race can have some of the most negative impact on other people's lives. And not all of us are strong enough to stand there and separate others' opinions, which we're all entitled to. But some of us aren't strong enough to handle other people's opinions, and it ultimately results in us not getting the help or seeking the help that we need, especially when it comes to mental illnesses. Some of the ways that we can actually help out and reduce mental health stigmas, first and foremost, is just to educate yourself. Get educated before opening your mouth. That would definitely help out a lot. I mean, I know for myself, I can only speak from my truth, which is in the beginning, I did a lot of talking without educating myself on certain things. And it took an incident a report that I read, that just kind of touched me in a way to kind of change my mindset. And from that point on, just looking at every aspect and details when it comes to stigmas surrounding mental illnesses, I've just made it my mission to educate as much as possible. So that is one way that we can help reduce some of the stigma that goes on, is definitely educating ourselves. That way we're able to better help those who are in need, whether it's your family, friends, co-workers, or just a complete stranger. And then also, it's not just mental illnesses, substance abuse issues too. A lot of times we try to push off or dismiss those people of just calling them junkies or druggies or drug addicts and things like that. Well, sometimes it's caused by some kind of mental break that they've had that caused them to start using. And no, we're not strong enough. Not all of us are strong enough to stand up there and help that person individually. But what I can say is that it is best for us to be educated enough to be able to point those people in that direction. So let's not just surround about mental illness or mental health. Substance abuse has to deal with it as well. And then just being aware of our attitudes and our behaviors towards someone who might be a little bit more extreme than ourselves. And again, that just goes back to being educated on, mental health. So I would say definitely, check your attitude, check your behaviors, just so you can better understand and help those in need too. And then in some weird way, let's try to focus on the positive. We shouldn't just be dealing out on just the negatives of mental illnesses. We have to be able to see that light at the end of the tunnel early on and just try to stay positive. It is hard to do that, especially when you're dealing with certain different areas of mental illness. But if you can remain as positive as possible, definitely try to do so. So that's another way. And then to support people. Support people the best way that you know how. If you're not educated enough or you don't have the answers, guess what? Google is our best friends. We can go Google it and find out what we need to do, what directions we need to point people into. I would always say if you know someone, point them in a direction of just starting out with therapy and getting them into some kind of therapy sessions or counseling sessions. Or if it's a little bit more extreme, again, that just goes back to educating yourself, to be able to, support those people that's in your lives and not in your lives. And then try to include everyone. Don't just... And we tend to do this a lot when it comes to stigmas, is where we try to be hush-hush about certain aspects, or the person that's going through it doesn't want a lot of people to know. And the reason why they don't want a lot of people to know is based upon the stigma that is out here in the world. And I'm not saying to broadcast it by any means, but if they want to keep it private, let them keep it private. But we should start including everyone, especially if it's a family thing. Don't just keep it, just tighten it, and when things explode or things come out, then it could turn into a whole different other problem. And then last but not least, I'm going to spit out some statistics to you guys. This was a research that was done back in 2018. And it was done by psychiatry.org. And the question is mental health stigma decreasing? And according to this article, mental health diagnoses actually have increased. They've increased from 22% to 36%. Again, this is all surrounding back in November of 2018. And then people actually seeking treatment have increased from 19% to 34%, which is not a bad thing. That actually shows that people are starting to reach out more and more for help. And this goes for, both therapy and medication management. Now, another surprising thing, though, and this is what kind of makes this kind of sad, is that suicides, they have increased from 6% to 11%. So it's to say that mental health definitely is not going anywhere. We should be treating mental health just like if a family member had lupus, or a family member had some kind of autoimmune disease, or if you had diabetes, to, different cancers, to whatever. We should be treating mental health just like that, because it is no different. It's just a mind disease, and we shouldn't be pushing people off or making fun of, or making a situation a lot worse than what it needs to be. So it's definitely not going anywhere. And guys, we really have to get ourselves together. Us as a human race, there's so many other aspects that are going on, from racism to religious issues to all of this, and it all comes back and it all affects our mental health. And if we can't see that or become a better human race, we're going to continue to be fighting, this uphill battle. And I just hope that with this station, getting back to the basics of this podcast episode, we can start making some strides and making headway of clearing those things up. Definitely stay tuned, guys. I will be doing another podcast episode with a guest. Her name is Monique. She'll be coming on our show, and we're going to be talking about triggers. So definitely stay tuned. We have lots to discuss, and we're going to keep forging forward to try to break this stigma. We really need love out here, to say the least. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will talk again soon. Thank you, guys.